On this episode of Unpacking Possibility, I sit down with physicist and founder of the Applied Precognition Project, Marty Rosenblatt. Now, what we're going to talk about might blow your mind a bit because Marty's going to share his technique, remote influencing, to influence the healing of your body and mind for the better. Now, I know it's a little bit hard to wrap your mind around, but Marty's going to detail the specific steps that he uses and has used to heal things in his own body. It's something that's a wonderful tool for us to add to our own toolboxes. Now, what he'd tell you and what I'm going to tell you is, of course, if you have a health condition, please consult your healthcare team. But this is something that can be a really powerful adjunct to whatever else you're doing to stay healthy and get healthier. So sit back, buckle up, and I hope you enjoy the show. So hi everyone and welcome to another episode of Unpacking Possibility. I'm your host Tracy Stein. As always, I'm so happy to be here with you today. You are going to be fascinated by what our guest has to talk about today, and he is none other than Marty Rosenblatt. Some of you may be learning about him for the first time. Some of you may already know a lot about Marty, but he is a physicist who received his bachelor's and master's degrees in physics from UCLA. Previously, Marty was vice president of the Titan Research and Technology subsidiary of Titan Corporation, where he managed a group of 20 scientists who developed and applied sophisticated computer programs for analyzing high-energy problems of interest to the Department of Defense and NASA, including hypervelocity impact and nuclear weapons effects. Marty's one of the original co-founders of the Applied Precognition Project, otherwise known as AP. He's president of Physics Intuition Applications, which he founded in 1998 to apply remote viewing to predicting stock market and sporting event outcomes. Marty teaches financial and sports precognitive application workshops, and he also teaches about self-healing, holistic healing, remote influencing for healing, and we're going to get into that a little bit more in a moment. But welcome, Marty.
My pleasure to be here, Tracy.
Thank you so much. And, you know, as we spoke about a moment ago, I have, watched your talks. I have attended one of your conferences, and I'm so struck by the caliber of scientists and researchers that you get to come and speak at your conferences, and the way you really so eloquently take what could be hard to digest concepts for the average person, and you make them digestible. So I would love to hear more about your work teaching people to heal themselves.
Okay, yeah, that's something I've actually gotten into in a big way about a year ago. But you should know, back in 1998 or so, God, that was a long time ago, when I first was getting into this field, I really thought about it, that I want to get into healing, which seems so important, or precognitive remote viewing.
Something that Marty is talking about now and throughout this episode and part two is called remote viewing. Now, if that's a term that's new to you, it's a type of mental process or skill, but it's really an intuitive and psychic skill. And it's something that is more structured and disciplined than I think most other approaches. But it's a way of gathering information about something specific. Whatever that specific thing is usually referred to generally as the target. You'll hear Marty using that term as well. But the target can be anything at any point in time, at any location, anywhere. The thing about remote viewing, again, is it's very structured. It was actually developed at Stanford Research Institute in the 1970s, and the US government funded research into remote viewing for about 2 decades. So Marty's going to talk about remote viewing and also how this relates to tapping into information to change your own health.
And I chose precognitive remote viewing way back then because as a scientist, as a physicist, I knew that you could keep records, and other people were into it, but nobody was really keeping good records then. And it was at the level where we were trying to, quote, prove it. Well, we're well past that with precognitive remote viewing. It's been proven over and over again scientifically. And so now I decided to get into healing, which always seemed more important. Healing people seems most important. They do have a very important aspect in common, and that is intention. Intention is so key.
Here, Marty describes his process and the process he uses with others to employ remote influencing to facilitate healing and self healing.
So, in healing, of course, and this is what we do this at 9 o'clock in the morning Pacific time every day. We have a small group who will have whatever their intention is to heal. It may be physical, like I worked on his shoulder, it got all better. Then I work pretty quickly, actually. Then I work on other things which I feel need to be healed in a pretty general way. So it's not only physical, it could be emotional, mental. It could have to do with my remote viewing or other psychic things I'm working on. So you set that intention. And then what we do is we do two meditations. One meditation is designed to get you deep as we can get into, I'm now calling it source, a higher power, God, whatever people refer to. Almost anybody who gets to where they're listening to this or want to do this have a sense that there's something greater than them. So you bring that closer to you. And then we do a second meditation where we basically trust that this higher power will do the healing. And that one goes on for 15 to 25 minutes as long as the people want to, and they stop in their own. It's really very simple. We recommend that you do this every weekday. We do it every weekday. And it's really very simple.
So, just to summarize quickly, here Marty details the steps for remote influencing your health, otherwise known as self healing. Number one, get in a quiet space. Kind of set aside other things for now. Number two, get really clear on what it is you want to heal. Now, often that's going to be a physical health issue, but it could be an emotional health issue, a relationship, something related to work that you want to improve. And then number three, Marty recommends going into a deep meditation. It can be brief, but it should be deep. He connects to a sense of his higher power. And you can think about this as your higher self, God, source, the divine. It really doesn't matter. But get into that space, that mental space where all things are possible. And then the key here is to envision the healing as if it is already done. So, whatever has been bothering you, as if it's already healed. He talks about how that's a key to having a good outcome. More on that in a bit.
And it's really very simple. The key is intention, using, and there's so many books out on this now, what's called subtle energy. Um, and I will get just a little physics in here because
Please.
I think it's important to understand the subtle energy concept. And it comes from what's called the 0 point energy field. Now, don't get blown away by that. That's something, well, that's something from quantum mechanics, and it sounds scary, but let me explain that to you. It also is called vacuum energy, because if you go out in space and you think there's absolutely nothing there, and there might be no mass at all, so it's between galaxies, guess what? There's energy there, a lot of energy. That's called 0 point energy because the quantum mechanics, and this has been proven in laboratory as well, shows that you cannot have any place with zero energy. Well, it turns out 0 point energy is rather large. Um, it's got energy densities on the order of what happens in a nuclear explosion. All of that kind of energy that comes there, the source of that is something like 0 point energy, but it's uniform. Now, not only in the vacuum, but in every cell in your body, every atom in your body, every neuron cell in your body um, is connected to 0 point energy. And it gets regenerated over 10 to the minus 30 seconds, almost instantly. So it's down there, and they're fluctuating things coming from what many scientists will still call nothing. Now, here's where I'm convinced that what they call nothing is actually spiritual space. So the intentions go down to the spiritual space, influence this 0 point energy field, which then gets into your body and influences your body. And this is happening moment to moment to moment. Most things are by the equivalent of inertia. You know, the concept of inertia. Well, all the things which have happened in the past generate the same 0 point energy field, only changed by intentions. And in healing, most of the time you don't spend time on healing. Most people don't. And you have a lot of healing, natural healing capability. You cut yourself and it takes care of it by itself. You do have that. But if you want to heal something faster, something more serious, you can bring intention to play and help it. I mean, we have these great success stories that people give us after they do this.
Okay, if this is a little bit much to wrap your mind around, or if it's been a while since you've sat in a high school or college physics class, never fear. The essence of what you might want to take from what Marty is saying is that intention is key in healing. So keep your intentions really specific, focused, and positive on the outcome you want.
Okay, I will stop. That was pretty long. So go ahead and ask some
I
more
I want
questions.
to ask some questions just because I want to make sure I understand clearly and that
Yes,
anybody listening, because again, I think most people don't have the physics background you do, myself included.
right.
But you know, tell me if I'm getting this right. So basically, I'm going to say, what I think you said Inga Swan referred to as the matrix, or you've described as this universe of collective consciousness. Somebody else would maybe describe it a little differently. I'm going to say just this realm of potential, and our intention and our actions in accordance with that intention can affect this kind of, I'm going to say again, matrix, for lack of a better word. Um, I'm thinking about it similarly to how people talk about manifesting, which I think people talk about a lot. It's a term that turns some people off because it can sound too new agey and not specific.
Hmm.
But the idea is that the universe is not, that it is somewhat responsive to our intentions and actions and so forth. Am I getting that right? A little.
Yes,
Okay.
and you obviously have listened to some of my other workshops and webinars. The universe of collective consciousness is a place that contains everything that consciousness touches at the level of ideas, level of intentions, also probable states. Um, Guess what? That's ultimately spiritual. Here, I first use the word spiritual rather than universal collective consciousness, but they're all very similar because they're non-physical. And the source of the physical world is the spiritual world. Um, and yes, manifestations are, well, health manifestations are one thing, but, well, all of that is done with intention. People don't understand how important intentions are, really. Our whole moment to moment to moment flow are based on moment to moment intentions. All you have is the now. In the physical world, your whole life is a series of nows. And it's only with those nows that you have intentions or inertia. And that starts from the moment of conception to the moment you pass over into the spiritual world. Um, these now moments in the physical world include the future. That's how precognition happens. You can actually gather information from the future and bring it back into the now. But notice what you're doing is connecting two different nows. Okay, the now when you start your precognitive session, and the now when you get your feedback session. And that's, we spending a lot of time working with, it's all with the feedback. The feedback is the reality. And gee, how wonderful that you can share that with an earlier time. And people do really well when they focus on their feedback.
Okay, this might be a good place to quickly summarize and clarify a few things Marty's saying here. Number one, he's talking about how you really want to be very clear and have clear intention when you want to manifest something. And actually, this is what other people have said about how to manifest well. This has been my experience also. And basically, if you want to think about it with a going out to dinner analogy, let's just say you go to a restaurant. If you tell the waiter that you want food and aren't more clear and specific, who the heck knows what you're going to wind up getting? Being really clear and specific makes it much more likely you will achieve a specific result and one that you want. Okay, so number two, Marty talks about life being a series of now moments from the day we're born till the day we pass away. And what he means by that is going to be easy for anyone who's familiar with mindfulness meditation to understand. Because what Marty's saying is basically in this moment, the moment that you're listening to this podcast, it's your now. A week ago, when you were getting ready to go to bed for the evening, you're paying attention in that moment. That was your now, even though we're thinking about it in terms of the past. And some future thing that you would like to know more about how it's going to play out in this now, when that future event actually takes place, it will be the now of that moment. And what he's saying is if you're doing any sort of precognitive work, you're trying to tap into the future psychically, when that future comes and you've gotten that information about how it plays out, pay attention to it. Imagine sending that information back to you in the moment when you're trying to discern what will happen. What he's saying is doing something like that connects two nows. Now, there are different ways of gathering that information. What Marty's talking about when he's talking about feedback pertains specifically to remote viewing, associative remote viewing, group associative remote viewing, again, where you're trying to make a prediction about something that will happen at a future time. More on that later in this episode and in the next one. So, you're making me think of so many things. I'm trying to organize my own thoughts around this because there's about 40 that I'm having right now. One is that a lot of times I've described to people, the idea of whether it's manifesting or bringing about a different future, whether it's related to health or something else, is like imagining holding a balloon bouquet. And each balloon represents a possible future. Some of the balloons are closer and they might be more probable. Some might be farther away. Some you might let go of. The intentions we have, like you were just saying, and the actions we take on behalf of those intentions or in accordance with them bring one possible future or balloon closer, and the others maybe will become farther away. So that there is this interaction, I think, as you're saying, about what we do and what we intend and what becomes more probable.
In today's now,
Yes.
You have an intention for and so I have people do the healing, and they do feedback sessions when they feel they're improving. They should always watch what their healing intention was, but when they feel they're improving, they should give credit to the earlier intention. In other words, that closes a healing loop and makes it even stronger as it goes on. So you get healed. But you, Tracy, you get it. And that's what I'm hoping listeners sort of get. It's up to you. It's your consciousness that's interacting with whatever name you want to give it, the matrix, all that is, the Akashic records. Other people
Yes.
called it that. But it's the spiritual aspect of you. When you choose your intentions, you're telling the spiritual world, this is what I'm considering to be important. Just stay positive. You get negative, your spiritual part says, oh, okay, so you want to be negative, and it'll just reinforce that. I have a beautiful writing from Bruce Lipton where he talks about that. And he says that you can actually change your genetic makeup based on your thoughts. And again, positive thinking will change it. So that's also another way of looking at healing. Go ahead, ask more questions. I got 40 things going on in my mind as well.
So, we don't know each other. Just for people tuning in, I have met you, but you've met like a zillion people. So, and it was a while ago, but of course, because I've listened to so many of your talks, like you're kind of a part of my own consciousness, right? My own kind of library. And I'm thinking, as someone who, I'm a psychologist, I do a lot of hypnosis. This is a question I wanted to ask you your opinion on. And it does relate to healing, whether it's physical or psychological or relationship. A lot of times people get referred to me because they've tried a lot of other things. By the time they come to me, nothing has worked. And I am not the person making the change for them. I'm the person helping them use a new tool. But one thing I've noticed is that hypnosis can be so powerful at shifting what is possible for someone, and they can wind up feeling and doing better in any of a variety of ways. But you mentioned something in a recent talk. You actually quoted Joe McMoneagle, and he said, and you said, that intention, attention, and expectation play a key role in bringing about healing or progress in controlled remote viewing. We can talk about that in a moment. But what struck me about that is that when people describe hypnotic states, when we talk about trance states, there is a shift in attention. It's focused attention and shifting awareness away from other things to that thing you want to focus on. So it's absorption in something, intention, attention to it. And it's occurred to me before, to what extent is using something like hypnosis, which is a psychological tool, tapping into something beyond simply the psychological? And I don't know if anybody's really looked at that, because when you describe quantum healing, and Bruce Lipton describes it, or Joe McMoneagle talks about being able to see something that is distant in space and time, it seems to have the same ingredients.
It's true. They're all connected, and they're all connected with this spiritual Akashic record matrix world. And your idea of using hypnosis, I think hypnosis can be very powerful because you've got their intention now, you've got their attention. If you can, under hypnosis, get their expectation that they will be healed, and that all of this is coming from the spiritual. If they're open to this idea of the spiritual, then I think you'll be able to really assist them. And I think if you can have a prelim, which includes the spiritual, it'll be even more powerful, because I've come to understand that the spiritual is the source of every aspect of the physical. Mental aspect, emotional aspect, it's all coming from the spiritual. And your intentions go down to the spiritual and play themselves out through the 0 point energy field. That's what I really believe that.
Marty, it's up to you if you want to answer this, but I'm curious about how a guy who was you still are a physicist, but
Right.
was in that more traditional role and working for NASA and, intelligence, U.S. intelligence. How did you make the shift from working more traditionally to really being so immersed in a spiritual worldview?
Probably goes back to when I was very young, really into science fiction, and you have all of these imagined things. But then, as a physicist, we had a contract with the Defense Intelligence Agency, and I came across a paper by Hal Puthoff and Russ Targ, one of their first papers. In fact, remote viewing was mentioned in that, precognition was mentioned in that. And I said, you guys really need to look at this. I mean, this is rather amazing. They sent me off to see Puthoff and Targ, and this was in the early 1970s, okay, working as a physicist. But those guys were so impressive that the work that they talked about way back then, you just had to believe it. And then when I basically retired, I started physics, intuition, applications, and then Applied Precognition Project. Because once, as a physicist, you get these ideas which counter the mainstream physics, I couldn't look away. I needed to pursue it.
Yeah, it's always so interesting, right? Because I feel like for most people, the safer thing is to just keep doing what most people would be like, oh, that's okay. It's not, there's nothing objectionable there. And then to go focus your energy and your knowledge on something that is, I'm going to say cutting edge, but for some people it's like, whoa, wait, that's too much. So
Right.
I always feel like the stories are so intriguing. Um, I wanted to ask you your thoughts on people's, not everybody has the same reaction to the idea of remote influencing because it can sound very science fiction. It can sound a little scary. The fact that we are influencing outcomes beyond what's in our immediate physical sphere. And you've talked about this. We're influencing stuff all the time, whether or not we want to, and whether or not it's in a direction we would like it to go. You alluded to that before when you said you're better off trying to think of things positively because, so often our thoughts and our energy is focused on all the million awful things that could happen and not focused on changing that.
No, that's exactly right. Plus, some of this is subconscious. So sometimes you
A
need
lot.
to, and that's where hypnosis might come in. You go deep into your subconscious and you find there are things going on there that you might not have been completely aware of, but that has intentions as well. And let me just say one other thing about this, talking to other people about remote influencing. When I was a physicist, I could not discuss this with other physicists. Yeah, sure. Hal Puthoff, Russ Targ, people who I knew about were in the field, but you just couldn't talk about it. It's getting a lot better now, but people had a hard time with it. I was once at a dinner party. Someone asked me what I was doing. I told them about the physics, but I said I'm getting into consciousness and remote viewing. And I explained what remote viewing. He got up and left the table. He said, that's ridiculous. That's impossible. People have emotional negative responses to something that's this far out in their minds.
I understand, I've had a variety of reactions and I've been careful about who I say, talk to about my interests, although the older I get, the less I really worry about most things, including that. So that's kind of a blessing. But, it's the term remote influencing that I think it sounds like something dangerous or something where you're
Mm-hmm.
making other people do your bidding. The thing is, I was thinking, like, you know what? A salesperson convincing you to buy a product you don't want is influencing you. A politician convincing you of something that may or may not be true is influencing you. Your
Right.
partner influencing you to, go on this vacation versus that vacation. Or When somebody prays for a specific outcome, that is a type of focused intention work.
Absolutely. And remote influencing goes on all the time. Did you see all the commercials during the Super Bowl? Everyone there was trying to influence you to do something and remember their name and stuff like that. And so remote influencing is right. But the part that gets scary is if you can remote influence someone's mind, and if you can read their mind and then influence them. Obviously, mind reading remotely is possible. The influence part, I don't know if there have been any scientific studies on that, but I'm afraid that it's true. And as this gets to be more and more known, and people get better at remote influencing themselves, notice what we do with our remote viewing the future is you're influencing yourself. You do your remote viewing session, you generate a transcript based on information you're getting from the future, but that future information is influencing your now. But when you get to the point where you're doing it with other people and really working on influencing them, all I can say is you need to be strong enough that you don't permit that. The people used to say, I can put blocks around me and stop it. Others say there's nothing you can do. I mean, now you're at the disturbing edge of what this all means. And yet I believe we're going to have to go through it all. There's a paradigm shift waiting to happen.
And like you and I both said, there's the mundane kind of analog to that, right? All the deliberate influencing people do in a million other ways. Again, like you said, TV commercials and so forth. Getting back to the influencing healing though, and your own healing specifically, you use an example in one of your talks that actually is commonly used, believe it or not, in hypnosis as well. I want to talk about that because I think it will make this all clearer to people for whom it's new. Because I think it still can be a little like overwhelming or like, how is that possible? One of the very benign, otherwise conditions, but bothersome that is hard to treat medically is warts. People have warts, they burn them off with chemicals or they, have them surgically removed and they come back again and again. Again, with hypnosis, there's tons of anecdotal evidence and case studies about using hypnosis to make a wart go away with suggestion by, having a cool pen rubbed over somebody's wart with a suggestion that it will disappear. And sometimes it happens within a matter of days. You were talking about that as an example of something you might do holistic or self healing on or remote influencing yourself. The feedback I want to make clear for people you were saying is as you're noticing the wart get smaller or less dense, that's the feedback. And it's working. And so you say, great, it's working. I'm going to do it more.
Okay.
If it's a wound that you can see healing or a headache that's going away and so forth, the same thing. Seeing that difference is the feedback and it prompts you to keep on going. Is that fair?
And not only is that fair, the wart one reminds me many, 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 many years ago, even before I got into this, you read things about that. And like this, you just can't help read it. Both science fiction books, people are telling you this happens. I had a wart on my finger and I meditated on it disappearing, being gone. And by golly, in 3 or 4 days, it was gone. That was one of the first times I did this. And it was before I got into this as deeply as I am now. Headaches, I don't get headaches anymore. Headaches are pretty easy to get rid of, again, with your intention. Now, these aren't migraines. Migraines may be different, but a normal headache, if you look at it, intending it to go away, and I ask, what color is it? What shape is it? Where is it? And it'll morph a little bit. And if you keep doing that, it'll disappear. And you do that for a couple of headaches, and then you don't get them anymore. Why bother? Intention, intention, intention. expectation, stay positive. Yeah, you've got to pay attention to this stuff, trying not to let your mind wander. It's amazing how much your mind wanders. That's where hypnosis might be a really good approach to keep your attention on what you're intending.
Yeah, I love that you talk about intention, positive expectation, being disciplined and doing this regularly. Again, there's so much out there on manifesting, which is a term people are probably more familiar with, but isn't really so different. It took me a while to get out of my own way with manifesting certain things and not the other things I was inadvertently or unintentionally manifesting. And this could be with health, this could be with work, this could be with a relationship, this could be with, we were looking for a house.
Hmm.
And, with the previous house, it just wasn't the right fit. It was great on paper, not the right fit for us. I think we manifested a combination of our fears about what we could and couldn't find in a certain time frame and what we thought we could. And it was uncanny what we wound up with. And this time we moved again recently. My husband really made a concerted effort to step into the experience of walking in to this specific house long before this person had decided they want to sell. And I really made a concerted effort to step into the experience of being relieved and excited and comfortable and feeling at home. That shifted everything.
Hmm. Hmm.
And when you talk about that, it really resonates
Yeah,
because if
no,
it's
that's
just intellectual, forget it.
oh no, it's right. It's not. It's emotional, it's intuitive, and the way you said it was beautiful. You step into it in the now, um, and it'll manifest in the future. Yeah, no, that was beautiful. And it's the same thing with health. You've got your intention, and when you're meditating on it, you meditate as if it's now. You have it, and then you let it play out, and you have positive expectations that it will.
That's the hard part, right? Is that being excited about and grateful for something that has not yet happened in this now. If you enjoyed learning about manifesting, remote influencing your health, and precognition, among other things, make sure to check out part 2 of my interview with physicist and founder of the Applied Precognition Project, Marty Rosenblatt. You can find it on all of your favorite streaming services, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and Amazon Music. And if you want to try out some self-hypnosis for manifesting, you can check out my audio program, Manifesting During Deep Sleep. It also helps you get a great night's sleep, and it's available at hayhouse.com and on my website, tracystein.com. And of course, if you enjoyed the episode, please do remember to like, share, and follow. Leave me a comment. It helps me continue bringing more great content to you. And as always, until next time, be well.